So basically, to make a long story short,
Too late.
Jonathon Lynn. The first question I have is, when was the last time you've seen this film?
Well, funnily enough, it was fairly recently. There was a midnight screening of it in LA, and I suppose it was about 3 or 4 months ago. And the people who put on this screening every year always ask me to come, and once in a while I do. And I did then. So it's only about 3 or 4 months ago.
And did they show all 3 indies?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a favorite?
No, actually. I think the last one is the most complicated, and therefore it's my favorite. I think it's almost impossible to follow, which. But if you listen carefully enough, it does make sense.
I can't even count how many times I've seen the film, and I don't know if I agree with that. I figured it out.
I think I'm probably the only person that knows or knew how it all made sense, which I did when I wrote it. But that was a long time ago.
I'm curious, with working with some of these great comic actors, was there improv? I mean, how much of Madeline Kahn's Mrs. White was what she brought to it herself? Or
well, actors bring, their own personality to it, little things. The only improv in the movie is Madeline's speech about the flames, which came as a big surprise to me when I said action. And I thought it was so funny that I didn't bother to shoot the bit I'd written there.
So there's going back to the endings. We talked briefly in the lobby about this. Did it jog your memory? Do you remember? There's a 4th ending to the film that never made it to the theaters. Do you remember what it is?
Absolutely not. I have no recollection of it.
Is that good, huh?
That's right. It didn't really work. It was. I mean, I was asked to write this film with 4 endings. That was the commission I had from Paramount, and 3 of them were kind of okay, and the 4th one we shot it, but it really wasn't good enough, and so you hasten to cut that kind of thing when it's clear that it doesn't work. And I have no idea what it was or who did it.
There was something about Wadsworth poisoning people, and
I have no idea.
He gets in a car with, and there's a Doberman Pinscher in it. Nothing? No, but
I don't know. Sorry. No, I have no idea. And the script that I kept was the script of the finished movie, so I have no idea what was in the original.
What was the relationship between you and John Landis? John Landis, who did Blues Brothers, Animal House, also, really...
Trading Places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John was going to direct the film. I had never been to Hollywood, or indeed the West Coast. And I was directing at the National Theatre in London, and I was writing a television series, which was a big success.
Yes, Minister.
Yes, Minister, it was called. And for some reason, Peter Goober, one of the executive producers, was in London, and I was sent along to meet him by my agent. And we met, and within about 3 minutes, he said, "I have exactly the right project for you." And he offered me Clue, and I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, it's a board game." So I said, "Well, that sounds jolly interesting." So anyway, to my surprise, my agent got a call saying they want you to go over to Hollywood and meet John Landis, who's going to direct this film. So I went because I'd never flown first class. I knew they were offering that. I thought they were very generous. It turned out to be the basic provision of the Directors Guild to fly directors first class. And I'd never been to the West Coast, and I was really curious, and I thought, I'm free this week, you know, what harm can it do? So I got on the plane, and after the longest flight I could possibly have imagined, we got to LA, and the next day I went to meet John Landis, and he was mixing Thriller, the Michael Jackson video.
He's a pop singer.
He was a pop singer. And in fact, when we were mixing it, John was very much in control of the set, and it was very impressive what was going on the screen. And this really nice black kid came over to me and said he was sending out for some pizza and would I like some, and I said yes. Specify what I want. It turned out this was Michael Jackson. I hadn't recognized him from the screen, but anyway, he certainly ordered good pizza. So, you know, that was all very exciting to me. And then the next day, I went to see John in his office, and he pitched Clue. Now, in England, you don't pitch films, really, because, you know, it's a truism that Americans overstate everything and the English understate everything. But it's true. So in England, you might walk into a meeting and say, well, actually, I've got a sort of fairly amusing little idea, you know, which you might perhaps be interested in. Well, you know, if you said that to someone at Paramount, they'd throw you out. It has to be great. Great is the minimum adjective. So John is really good at pitching the American way. So he ran around his office. He shouted and screamed. He leapt on the furniture. He leapt on the desk. You know, he told me about the arrival of all these characters, and there was a butler, and he described some of the events that finish up in the film. And he got to the moment when the butler said, and I could tell you who did it. So I was, you know, on tenterhooks. And I said, so who did? And he said, I don't know, that's why I need a writer. So I phoned my agent in London and said, these people are insane. Can I come home now, please? And he said, well, now you're there, why don't you try and think of something? So I stayed up all night, and I did get a couple of ideas. And so the next day I went in and pitched them, not the way John pitched them, I murmured them to John. And he liked the ideas and said, fine, okay, we'll get you to write it. So I went home with a deal to write a Hollywood film without the faintest idea, really, of what it was going to be or how it was going to work. So that's how John was involved. Well, anyway, so I wrote the script, and this, it didn't take very long, and I was flown back again, and everyone loved it, which amazed me. And then at that point I discovered I was the sixth writer. There'd been 5 previous writers who had all given up, quite understandably. And I was the only one who was mad enough to have attempted to see it through. And John, by this time, had gone off the idea and was wanting to direct a different film. But they knew I directed plays in London, and John said, would you like to direct it? So I said, yeah.
If they keep flying you first class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I became the director of it. That was my first movie. So that's the story.
There's a lot of connection between, between Murder by Death and this film. Is that?
I don't know. What are the connections?
Eileen Brennan's a link between them.
Oh, she had Murder by Death? I didn't know that. I never saw Murder by Death.
Really?
Well, does it take place in a sort of
it's a
remote house?
Mystery. Yeah.
Murder mystery in a remote house. Agatha Christie invented this genre, and everyone's been doing joke versions of it on and off over the past.
So we can
5 years.
officially debunk all of the connections between Murder by Death and Clue.
I never saw Murder by Death.
I think that does it. I think they're debunked.
Okay. No. Are there any connections other than Eileen Brennan?
Yeah, Eileen Brennan actually falls in the exact same way, right in the foyer, right in front of the front door.
If I'd known that, I would have got her to fall in a different way.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wouldn't have had her fall the same way in 2 different movies.
So speaking of Eileen Brennan and Madeline Kahn, what was how did you get all these people together? I mean, they're some of the funniest people.
They came in to meet. They'd read the script. They came in to meet and were interested. It's the usual way.
Yeah.
You know, you meet people for parts.
You didn't know anyone prior?
No, well, I knew Tim Curry.
Yeah.
Tim and I were at school together. I knew Tim since I was 14 and he was 12. But apart from that, no, I didn't know any of the Americans in the movie. And I didn't know who most of them were. I mean, they were just people that came in to read, as far as I was concerned. You know, I'd never been here. And I knew who Madeline Kahn was, obviously, because I'd seen Paper Moon and the Mel Brooks film she was in, Young Frankenstein, and so, you know, so I was clear on her. But I think the others were all new to me, actually. And they just came in, and I liked them, and they seemed funny, and they read for the part. And Leslie Ann Warren came in very late. It was going to be Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher was very funny. She came to the meeting. She was very, very funny, and sniffing a lot. She seemed to have hay fever. And I phoned my wife in London and said, Carrie Fisher's really funny. I'm going to cast her as Miss Scarlet. And my wife, Rita, who's sitting out there, said, are you nuts? And I said, why? And she said, she's a drug addict. And I said, how do you know? And she said, it was in the Daily Mail. So I said, you know, I gave her the speech about not believing what you read in the papers and things. And I met Carrie Fisher the following week, and she came in the restaurant, headed towards my table, fell over a chair, and was sniffing a lot. So I asked her, and she said she had hay fever, and of course I believed her. And she was very funny. And then a week before we started shooting, I got this phone call from her saying, I can't come to rehearsal tomorrow because I've checked into the rehab clinic at Century City Hospital. And, you know, I said, well, how are you going to do the movie? She said, oh, that's okay. I'll just sleep here and they'll let me out to do the movie every day. So I went and talked to Deborah Hill, who was the producer, after whom the house is named, Hill House.
It's good to be a producer.
Yeah. And I said to Deborah, Carrie Fisher's in rehab, and she says she can still do the movie. And Deborah sniffed a bit and said, I don't see why not. And so anyway, then we went to Dawn Steele, who was the head of the studio, and she couldn't see why not either. And then the insurance company intervened and said, no way. No way. So we had to replace Carrie Fisher at about 4 days' notice, and we got Leslie Ann Warren, who was lovely. So that's how she was cast.
But so the moral of that, though, is that drugs make you funny?
They made Carrie funny.
Make Carrie funny.
Yeah, unquestionably. Maybe she's funny anyway. I don't know. I've only ever seen her with hay fever, so I don't know.